Sleng Teng, Casio, and the quest to make tofu taste of something. This is my Casio MT41. I've owned it since the 80s and used to mess around with it as a kid. At that time I'd never heard Under Miss Sleng Teng, the infamous record that had a massive impact on Jamaican music, and this keyboard's significance in all of that. When I heard the record, it kind of blew my mind that something I considered as a toy had been used by real musicians to make a serious record. Okay, let's go for a walk and buy some stuff! So, what the F am I up to today? Well, I'm going to take this Casio MT41 apart, give it a much needed clean, maybe add some modifications to it, and as a secondary completely random mission, I'm going to make some jerk sauce and throw it over some tofu on a mission to potentially try and add some flavour to bean curd and, you know, like some Asian inspired Caribbean thing. Yeah, something like that. Got all the essentials for this mission: Casio, red stripe, tofu, spices, herbs. So the Casio needs to be stripped down so we can wash off all the plastic bits. Fortunately, the batteries don't seem to have puked everywhere. The story of Sleng Teng rhythm is already pretty well documented on the internet, but in case you don't know, here's a brief rundown. In mid-1984, a young musician named Noel Davey had been gifted a Casio MT40. It's exactly the same as the 41, except it's a cream white colour. Anyway, he'd been promised a Yamaha DX7 but ended up with the consumer-grade Casio. Nonetheless, Davey and fellow musician Wayne Smith played around with the keyboard when they discovered the rock preset rhythm. Davey and Smith arranged the first version of Sleng Teng rhythm, with Wayne providing the vocals and the lyrics. They took their tune to producer King Jammy, who slowed down the rhythm and added some other elements like pianos and claps. On its release, the record was an instant success, which inspired some 500 cover versions, and after that its influence is considered a major milestone in bringing computerized production to Jamaican music. Next up, I'm going to prep all the ingredients and throw them in a blender to make some jerk sauce. The rock preset had been composed back in 1980 by Okuda Hiroko. She had been hired fresh from music school by Casio to create preset rhythms for their new keyboard. At school, she had produced one of Japan's first theses on reggae, and a few years later, before taking the job at Casio, she had immersed herself in all kinds of reggae music. So maybe not by coincidence then that the rock preset doesn't really work at a sort of rock and roll tempo, but really kind of lends itself to a slow down sort of half-time dub territory. Slice the tofu into cubes and cover it with the sauce. Then stick it in your fridge. Casio stuff from the 80s has this foam inside it which over time disintegrates and resembles something that looks a bit like jerk seasoning. So the Sleng Teng has definitely accumulated in this Casio. Meanwhile, I'm going to clean the plastic parts of the Casio. This was a really genius idea. Reassembly is the reverse of assembly. Right, time for one of these and to get cooking with some Sleng Teng rhythm. The tofu can be fried, grilled or oven cooked. I also ended up adding some prawns for the hell of it. I looked up some basic modifications for this keyboard and tried them out. Some of them didn't really work or really have much of a significant effect. I just kind of decided to leave it stock. However, I can demo them, as essentially they are just sort of bridging several pins together on these microcontroller ICs, which are sort of the heart of the keyboard, and that'll kind of give you an idea of maybe what how it sounds if you're thinking about doing it yourself. We can also have a basic look at how this keyboard works. So yeah, it's just meant to make sort of weird noises, but I can't really get it to do much. So all this is grounding out pin 3 to ground. That's got pin 3, this is pin 3. Doesn't really seem to do a lot for me. Oh, there we go. Get some white noise. So yeah, a bit pointless really. Right, this is an octave down. Mild vibrato. So this IC here is the main synth engine. It's a microcontroller, essentially a mini computer. So it has inputs and outputs, and then there's a bunch of custom code loaded into it, which under certain input circumstances, it will output something. In this case, the inputs are connected to the keyboard to trigger notes, and switches to set parameters like the pitch, the voice, and other things like sustain and vibrato. The outputs are essentially audio generated by the ICs, which is 2 mixed multi-pulse square waves. So it's quite a simple sort of synthesis method. The second IC here is also a microcontroller. It generates the percussion pulses, bass notes, and preset rhythms. And then all this stuff here is, I think, sort of additional filtering and envelopes for shaping the main synth sounds. And then there's some other stuff here that's associated with the percussion synthesis.